Hello and welcome to part 3 of my presentation of my version of the Wendy theory as it was presented by Rob Navarro on his YouTube channel some years back. Before I go in, I want to address the idea of the original Wendy theory. I don't necessarily subscribe to all his whatever is presented in the video as now this means this and this means that, therefore Wendy is this and therefore Wendy is that. I only call it this series of mine Wendy theory out of respect for him coming up with the idea that there might actually be a Wendy angle to this. And it has merely served, but beyond that, the Rob Navarro video has merely served as an inspiration for doing my own research. But it all starts with an idea, right? Like the heliocentric solar system. What do you call it? Is it geocentric or is it heliocentric? If everybody believes it's geocentric or Earth-centered, it sort of stays locked in until somebody gets the idea that, hey, it might actually be the sun at the center. Though some Greek had already discussed that, but that might not necessarily have been, well known to the rest of the world, right? But that's the first idea is what is necessary in order to create a theory based on the evidence of that could potentially support this theory, right? Or the idea that the theory is based on evidence that supports the idea, but fleshing out the evidence points in somewhat in some ways many different other angles or areas compared to the original video by Rob Navarro, or that's the name of the channel. I don't know who the guy is. The voice is artificial, the narrator. So who knows who this guy is, right? So, but that doesn't really matter. An argument is an argument, and that's it. It doesn't matter to me if it's a mechanical voice or a natural voice like I'm recording here. For all you care, you might consider me AI or something like that, right? So I don't know what to do in order to convince you that I'm not AI or ultimately, right? I'm just very, very good AI. But cheers. I'm not sure if AI drinks water, right? But I have taken the Wendy theory to its ultimate conclusion. And the problem with how it's presented is it's not completely... The guy hasn't scrutinized the whole 2.5 hour of the movie and other kinds of evidence for whatever he's going with. He has just come up with the idea of Wendy might be the central person or character in the story, and then found a few things here and there, and then tried to piece it together. It's fine, but it's far from perfect. And you can shoot holes in his sort of presentation one way or another by pointing out all sorts of other aspects that he doesn't deal with. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to deal with everything in the movie and then see how it fits with the idea or the theory. And the theory to me is it's not only on certain occasions that the picture or the frames are imbued with some kind of error that says now it's Wendy having some kind of illusion. All of what you see is a kind of, not illusion, but I'm not sure if he uses the term illusion or hallucination, I think he says, right? All of it is as a first-person view that is imbued with subconscious and imagination and hallucination and whatever have you, that a first-person view can be imbued with, right? So don't take what the name of my video series here, or my theory, is not Wendy theory as it's presented by Rob Navarro, but because he was the one who, as far as I'm concerned, came up with the idea. Out of respect for the theory, I'm sort of the next iteration of trying to get to the bottom of this Wendy idea. So that's it, right? Okay, so let's get into the movie, shall we? But just before we do that, I would like to recommend you go find, and it's also further down in my channel, you can go and watch the original trailer, which, as far as I have been able to figure out, was first seen in theaters in around Christmas 1979. So this is the first official piece of movie and sounds, for that matter, from what would become the Shining movie. And what is interesting about this particular shot is, first of all, that it has a piece of music which I believe is by Wendy Carlos, right? Who produced a lot of music for this movie, but not very much of it was used in the final product. And this was also something that she and her companion weren't that kind. They were kind of confused that we have created all this music while you're only using 1 or 2 tracks. So, right, like the Dies Irae we are going to touch on in a moment, right? It has a very abstract kind of almost. It's like a fusion abstract kind of music. It's really weird, really strange, right? And it sounds nothing like the rest of the movie. This is very, what's the term? It's almost like it's an abstract sort of painting music that could be associated with abstract or cubism or something weird, right? So the music in this trailer is really strange, and that's also one of these things that I'm curious about, and I'll read out loud here, right? The teaser trailer for The Shining was shown in theaters as early as Christmas 1979. It says nothing about Jack the Axe Murderer, right? Rather, it points to some psychological mind bleed. More precisely, what you will see in this movie is not to be understood literally, but symbolically. That's what this trailer tells me, at least, right? And if you go and read the novel, which I actually read, or I had an audiobook of it, and I got through to something like 2/3 way through the novel by Stephen King, and I was just bored out of my mind. I found it excruciating. That would be maybe too much, but I don't find it interesting, to be honest, right? This drunken guy and this perfect woman and this weird kid, it's just it doesn't appeal to me. And I tend to like to forget Stephen King when we're dealing with Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, because it's Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. He has actually improved the story, in my personal opinion, right? It's not to bash Stephen King, but I think personally that Stephen King was where was I going? He has become famous because all of his many of his novels have been adapted into movies, right? And some of them have been big successes, right? You know, Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile, The Shining, right? And this has sort of escalated his sales of books. And the books are not in a quality that I would sort of, I have to go and read Stephen King. Not for me, right? And I also think that Kubrick, I believe that Warner Brothers told Kubrick, basically, we want you to do this. After the sort of semi-failure of Barry Lyndon, he was probably sort of pushed a bit. Okay, we thought that everything you touch will turn to gold, right? Like with 2001 and A Clockwork Orange, right? Though they were strange movies in a way, it went down well with the audience. But that was not the case with Barry Lyndon, which was kind of his own pet project, because he couldn't do that Napoleon movie, so he had to do something similar in this way, I suppose, right? So it's sort of a vanity project by Kubrick, I think. And I personally, it's one of my least favorite movies by Kubrick, the Barry Lyndon movie, right? Though many people seem to like it for whatever reason, right? It's very well shot and so on, no doubt about that. But to me, it's boring, right? Okay, not so with The Shining, right? And I think he sort of, okay, I need to go all in on my sort of Kubrickian, method, right? But he also probably read the script and said, this is not good enough, right? I have to change this, I have to improve it in order to make it into a complete, interesting picture. And this is why he has adapted it with these various interpretation angles and allusion to supernatural and so on, and how much are you going to create give it some more punch, right? I believe that. Okay, but in the novel, Danny says, on the wall by the door going into the bedroom, a whole lot of blood and some other stuff, gushy stuff. I think that the gushy stuff must have been brains. And this sentence might have, inspired Kubrick. Even if the novel is not particularly great, it could be evocative, and it's sort of, okay, the idea of an elevator and blood, and brains, and a sort of connection between psychology and symbolism, interesting, right? Okay. The first shot we see, and that's all of course, the Warner Brothers logo, and we don't need to go into that, right? And it's, in my 35 scan of the movie, there is the original red and white, and red and white, I think, at least it's red, but I think it's red and white Warner Brothers logo from 1980, right? Which I prefer very much over the modern one, the more recent Warner Brothers that you will see in the DVDs and the Blu-rays and so on, right? Okay, so we see this particular shot, and everything kicks in simultaneously. The music and the movement towards this little island in this lake, it's sort of on like this. We are going. It's just head on, right? And it's split in half by the waterline, and there's these reflections in the water of a light side and a dark side, right? And there's something in the middle. It's sort of symmetry and so on, this way and so on, right? And it also alludes to diagonals, which are so common in a lot of Kubrick movies, right? This sort of diagonal symmetry it alludes to, right? And I can't help that. Look at it this way. There's no doubt about it, he is very concerned about pyramids and, secret societies and Freemasonry and Illuminati and that stuff, right? And all the pyramids in his movies that are so numerous, right? That if you fly on top of a pyramid, like this drone shot that I've found here, and look down. This is the Khufu pyramid in Egypt, Giza in Egypt, right? And look straight down on top of the apex. What you see is a square with diagonal lines, and there's a shadow side and there's a light side, and bluish and yellowish, and it's not far off, right? It's sort of about cognitive relation when you're dealing with art, because usually there are no words to explain what you see. You have to associate things yourself, right? Okay, concerning the Dies Irae, which is the Wendy Carlos's synthesizer version of an old chant that goes back to, who knows, sometime in the Middle Ages, I believe, right? And there's also a text, a chanting, it's sort of a droning kind of music, sort of foreboding of something. And Dies Irae is Latin, I believe, which means day of wrath or judgment day, right? So I'm sort of curious about why exactly did he choose this well-known kind of music, right? So I write Wendy Carlos synth version of the medieval hymn. Dies Irae means day of wrath. It refers to judgment day, the day you will be judged whether to go to heaven or to hell, according to the Christian Bible, right? It does not take much artistic imagination to see that Wendy can fit the poetics of this journey very well. These are extracts. There is some chanting text that you can sort of translate into your language, right? And I translated, or somebody has translated into English here. You can go and find the text somewhere, right? I don't remember exactly where I found it, but I'm not particular into Christianity, right? Okay, so these are extracts. The day of wrath, that day will dissolve the world in ashes. Okay, so this is where he tells us Wendy has been admitted to a mental institution. How great will be the quakening when the judge is about to come, strictly investigating all things. Okay, so Wendy is being investigated, or as I say here, interviewed by a doctor. Wendy has been put in a mental institution for whatever reason, and she's being interviewed or she's being investigated, right? The trumpet scattering a wondrous sound through the sepulchres of the regions will summon all before the throne. So Dies Irae plays in Wendy's head being driven, as she's being driven to this remote institution, right? I say remote because of, the overlook up in the mountains and so on. A remote place, some asylum, somewhere, right? So it echoes through the regions, right? Death and nature will marvel when the creature will rise again to respond to the judge. So Wendy's subconscious creatures rise in response to the interview, right? When therefore the judge will sit, whatever lies hidden will appear, nothing will remain unpunished. Wendy bleed mentality and everything from the shadow, this is not screwed up the text here. She bleeds mentally and everything from the shadow will be, she bleeds mentally, and what is hidden, what lies hidden will appear, nothing will remain unpunished, right? And the punishment might not be Wendy being punished, but those who come up from her shadow needs to be punished, right? Tearful will be that day on which from the glowing embers will arise the guilty man, woman, who is to be judged. Then spare her, O God. Wendy is on fire. She is angry. about being carried off to this place, right? As shown in the Colorado Lounge fireplace. When you see the fireplace later in the Colorado Lounge, there's this mural with these figures that's very much like the little twins in the corridor, right? And she's on fire, right? I mean, this is sort of, I'm associating ideas here. If you're Kubrick, you wouldn't for any good reason put Dies Irae in this movie unless it's to say this is the end of something, or a new or a new beginning of something, right? It's a turning point in somebody's life, and that somebody would be Wendy. I'm also, as I went through, I was reminded of Salvador Dali's painting Swans Reflecting Elephants, right? Dali operated a lot with subconscious dreams, the subconscious and dreams and so on. And supposedly he was very inspired by S. Freud. At least I've heard several sources claim that, and that's all I have to go on. But I wouldn't be surprised if that's what was the case, right? You see the same color scheme, the same color range in the composition, right? There's some extending to the right and the left, in the middle, and there's reflections in a swan, an elephant, and so on, right? So there's the visual, the persona part, but then there's the underlying, which is sort of a reflection. And the reflection can also be a way of saying that the persona is reflected on top of the shadow side in order to cover the shadow side. It's not necessarily two parts, but the reflection is the persona is sort of reflected on top of the shadow part in order to hide it away. And this is sort of also the same kind of theme that Salvador Dali was working with. And personally, I'm a big fan of Salvador Dali, right? Okay, but that's neither here nor there, right? But, you know, just for the sake of getting to say it. Okay, so if you take this recent or the prior picture and turn it 90 degrees, right? You have one of these ambiguous images of reversible figures, as they are, I think they're called, right? Where it's sort of, you know, this is it two faces or profiles of people, or is it a vase, or whatever is in the middle, right? Do you see this or do you see that? If you see one of them, you don't see the other, and if you see the other, you don't see the first one, and so on, right? This sort of ambiguity. And this is not the first time that this has appeared in a Kubrick movie. Okay, so ambiguous images and reversible figures are visual forms that create ambiguity by exploiting graphical similarities and other properties of visual system interpretation between two or more distinct image forms. These are famous for inducing the phenomenon of multiple perception. Multiple perception is the occurrence of an image being able to provide multiple, although stable, perceptions. There are two stories told in this movie, right? Though one is hidden under the mirror, so to say. Double faces here are from the start of Spartacus, the violet picture right there, right? Which also creates a small pyramid, the way the dissolve of the noses create a little pyramid, right? And it's two faces that become one face, right? If you know Pink Floyd, there's also what's it called, that late Pink Floyd album with the face? They're sort of kind of similar to this, right? Okay. Dealing with mirrors. Conscious and unconscious mind, and this is something I have plucked from somewhere, right? Mirrors can represent the dividing line between the conscious and unconscious mind, where the conscious mind is what we perceive and the unconscious mind is what is hidden or repressed. Self-reflection and introspection. Mirrors encourage individuals to examine their thoughts, feelings, and actions, fostering personal growth and understanding. Duality and internal conflict. Mirrors can visually represent the internal struggles and dualities within individuals, like the conflict between good and evil or social expectation and individual desires. This kind of duality of man, right? So Lacan and about mirror stage. In Jacques Lacan's theory, the mirror state describes the child's early experiencing of recognizing themselves in a mirror, which leads to the formation of the ego and the sense of self. And this could also be because, if it's not a secret to you at this point, I will reveal that this has much to do with childhood, this movie, right? And it will be illuminated for you as we go through the movie. But I think there's also might be this mirror stage is, if you can't see yourself as a person, your reflection will be whatever you see in the mirror, and not, I mean, at least it's hinted at through the twins and all this mirror shit going on, right? Okay, so maybe I shouldn't take it further than that. So then we tilt the helicopter camera, you know, tilts or strafe, I think it's called. It strafes to the right towards these cliffs, as if there's some, it's unbalanced, right? So this what looked as if it was stable, sort of, oh my God, right? Maybe everything is not necessarily as it should be. And then we go into the first dissolve, and it is a dissolve out of many dissolves throughout the movie. And I will deal with all the dissolves separately in a special video part after going through the whole movie. So I will not address what I think is going on within the dissolve, where two pictures merge through each other, right? Because I think these are central to understanding the movie. But I will sort of, as we've gone through the movie, I will try to explain, I think at this point at least, I will try to explain the idea of what is going on in the movie through the dissolves that goes through all the movie. This moment captures a kind of yin-yang mirroring or doubling. You see this S shape that goes through, right? It's sort of, you could turn it upside down and it would be the same, right? This S shape, if you turn that upside down, it will still be an S shape, right? And the little car is in the center, just like the island was before, right? And all these, you know, pines or whatever they're called, right? Seen from top down, just like the pyramid from before, right? Feels very much like seeing a maze from up on high, right? It alludes to the same kind of also these sort of moving through a maze, right? It's not far off, in my opinion. Then we see again the little yellow beetle in the center of the picture, and it's very much light blue and golden yellow, right? And these two colors are important thematic colors through the movie. The first time we see Wendy at the hotel, she has this checkered light blue robe, or you know, on, and the little girls are light blue, right? So it's important, but this beetle is symbolic, and the beetle is symbolic for a bear, which is Winnie the Pooh. And I might as well bring it in now, right? Winnie the Pooh is very important in this movie. This is why the beetle has turned from red to yellow. The original Stephen King beetle in that novel was red. Why would you change it to yellow? Why is that important? Because it has to fit with the color coding, right? Wendy is going to this institution. She associates herself with the mental limitation of this bear, right? And when you think about it, you never see Jack inside this beetle. You just connect the dots, as you see when we get to flying over the hotel later, and Jack walking in through the door. You say, okay, so that must have been Jack back in that car. But you never see Jack in the car, right? And it's also this movie making editing where you can sort of, through a montage, can you create a story? But that's the viewer creating the story. Though, of course, the one editing the movie is absolutely aware of what will go on in the viewer's head, supposedly, possibly, when they sit in the theater, right? But still, don't imbue meaning into, unless you state, well, I am imbuing this story with this meaning. Okay, fair enough, right? The little yellow dot again in the center, the the Volkswagen Beetle. I think it's actually called Käfer in German. Volkswagen Käfer, as a a funny version or funny name for Käfer means beetle in German, right? Presents Wendy, Winnie the Pooh Bear, going to a new place, right? Okay. And I think that the reason why Kubrick chose to use this long, panning shot going into the flying in and connecting sort of with the beetle up on the corner of that mountain there, rather when the road turns, is severalfold, which is both a feeling of grandiosity, which is this landscape is grandiose, right? But also because of the little yellow dots that are by the, which is associated with the car in a way, right? And still the light blue heaven there, or sky. And all of these colors have been fiddled with in modern digital representation, because these idiots do not understand what this genius was doing, right? So you have to have the original color scheme, otherwise you're destroying the whole thing, right? Colors are important. They have to be like the original. Okay, I'm ranting. But thirdly, there's a very, very, very important aspect here, and that is the helicopter shadow, the helicopter that records the film. The shadow is seen on the ground, right? In the first bit, and then it comes closer, and then the shadow disappears to the right. But in the first second or something like that, you see that shadow and then it disappears, right? As the helicopter moves into the ground. So because of the changing angle, it will disappear from the frame, right? But this one, this chopper, wouldn't be visible in the cinema version. The 166 or 1 times 166 in Europe, or 1 times 185 in the US, as far as I'm informed, right? It will be cut out of the frame, right? How? I mean, it's impossible that Kubrick was not aware of this. So he chose particularly this shot and editing in so far back that the shadow would be visible when we got to the home video version of it, right? And this huge error so early in the movie is to tell the audience, look for errors, right? Look for shit going on. He might as well have waited like a second or two, and this shadow wouldn't have been an issue at all. Nobody's going to tell me Kubrick is not aware of that shadow. Of course he would be careful to, make sure that these shadows weren't, or the rotor blades, which is an issue a bit later, right, are not in the way of the product, or not in the on the screen, right? I mean, Kubrick's not an idiot. Just saying, well, he didn't care, or he didn't see it. Bullshit, right? I call bullshit on that. I don't believe that, and I'll also going to give you a bit of argument for why I think he is completely and utterly in 100% of control of what is going on in this picture, right? Absolutely. He's not a goofy old bastard who doesn't know what he's doing, right? Just trying to create a scary, unsettling movie. No. This is carefully constructed until the minutest detail, right? Not just because I'm a fanboy, but because I'm absolutely convinced this guy, he knows what he's doing, right? He knows what he's doing. I had another point, but I forgot. Maybe I'll remember later. Okay, so as the camera, goes in towards the little yellow car, right, and sort of pass over it and goes to the left side of the road, right, the credits roll in. This is where the credits start. We sort of zoom, and then the credits start, right, just before we reach this point. I think it's very synchronized. When the title, the crawl, what's it called, is initiated at this particular point, and I'll get back to that in the next slide. The credits roll in. They move from bottom to top, which feels a bit strange, not least as the road and landscape basically moves in the opposite direction because of the camera movement. Usually the starting credits are shown static, while end credits scroll, right? Usually starting credits are shown like this and fade out, shown like this, fade out, and so on, right? It is opposite in The Shining. In the start it rolls. In the end credits they're stable, right? And the rolls at the beginning is in the opposite direction of how it usually done. It usually goes this way rather than this way, but this might have changed a bit over the years, right? So it's sort of a fluffy thing here maybe, right? This can allude to mirroring. The end has become the beginning and vice versa, also known as the breadcrumbs, right? Also, it could allude to this being the end of something, which is the beginning of something else. Dies Irae refers to an end, Judgment Day. The composition moves into a resemblance of the intro shot. It looks very much like the intro shot, right? So if this is a first-person view, it's a similar kind of first-person view we're dealing with here. And in the center we have the little yellow car, which must be a personification of the first person, right? That's why I'm saying that the car is symbolism for the person, and that yellow thing is Winnie the Pooh bear. The bear, right? The bear we will see a lot of throughout the movie, right? Or at least a bit of. The composition moves into a resemblance of the intro shot. The car is placed similarly to the lonely island in the first shot. The light blue Jack Nicholson across the yellow car subliminally associates the car with Jack, right? The double yellow lines on the road can symbolize Wendy's mental split, right? The yellow lines and the yellow car and the yellow tennis ball is also a little roundish thing, right? You see the symbolism? It's not too crazy in my opinion. And then we come to this, it flies over the side of the road and it says Shelley Duvall, which is Wendy, right? The Shining. It's basically saying Shelley Duvall is the Shining one, right? Come on! It's similar also to the, as I said, the first shot, right? Shelley Duvall is the shining one. Kubrick basically tells you who the main character is here and who is shining. It's a light blue and golden theme, still echoing the first shot. It's basically, you have the whole story there, in a way, right? Okay, so The Shining, when as it rolls, The Shining is featuring Danny Lloyd. So The Shining is associated with Wendy, but because it's Wendy, Danny is associated also with The Shining, and The Shining is associated with Wendy. So Danny is a part of Wendy, right? Kubrick indicates that Danny is a part of The Shining, and since that is Wendy, Danny is a part of Wendy. A still light blue and golden theme with a bit of sort of green maze mixed in, right? Danny Lloyd is chased by Scatman Crothers, right? Halloran. See, Scatman comes after Danny as they go into the tunnel, right? It's sort of the symbolism. Okay, no, Danny. Oh, Danny is chased by Scatman Crothers, which is Halloran. Maybe there might be something going on there. As child, chased by a grown-up. In these Epstein times, right? It might be there might be something going on there. Let's see later, right? Strong golden theme and light blue, of course, right? It has a sense of bird of prey stalking its prey, right? Bird stalking its prey. The way the camera follows the car that could be seen as trying to escape through a tunnel. Tunnel is also an obvious reference to a passing to another realm or a new state of mind or something like that. Just like with the elevator, right? Scatman Crothers is chased by Barry Nelson, which is Ullman. Maybe there's a connection between Halloran and Ullman, right? Let's see later. They may be working together. A little yellow Wendy, the Winnie the Pooh bear, is caught between them down there on the road. Note, it has been suggested that the parked white wagon is similar to the one seen in Lolita, an earlier movie from the early 60s by Kubrick, if you're not aware, right? As a reference to child abuse, right? Passing through the tunnel may be a reference to a passage to another place, another mental frame of mind, or another level of consciousness, within the one having the experience or the imagination. Again, when you see these lines, this diagonal lining and shining, and you know, right? This is something I found. This is Elbtunnel in Hamburg, right? Hamburg, which give you a feeling of going through a tunnel, right? They're similar to the pyramid thing and so on. And these lines that are in the Ullman office. Passing through the tunnel may be a reference to a passage to another place, another mental frame of mind, or another level of consciousness within the one having the experience or imagination. Did I already read that out loud? Sorry. Looking towards a tunnel vanishing point is very similar to looking down at a pyramid's peak, the Elbtunnel, the Khufu pyramid. There are several references to the pyramid shape from this angle throughout the movie, as well as seen from the side, a triangular shape, right? On the other side of the tunnel, there is an extraordinary strong diagonal lens flare. The Shining, right? So as she goes, the tunnel could be symbolizing she's going a bit into her shadow side. And what is going on there? Oh, there's a whole lot of shining. And what do we have there? Philip Stone and Joe Turkel, the two so-called ghosts, right? The ghost is something that goes on in the first person's shadow side. These are the ghosts that Kubrick is interested in, right? On the other side of the tunnel, there is an extraordinary strong diagonal lens flare shining from the upper left, adding little balls, little yellow balls even, and the red flood in the lower right, as if pointing to the tunnel. Is it the red? It's almost like blood coming out of an elevator, right? Little yellow balls there, like the tennis ball. I mean, come on, man, right? The light blue theme is the light blue color of the dress of the little twins, right? The first person having a split personality. Okay, Grady, Philip Stone, and Lloyd, the bartender, Joe Turtle, appear during this strong shine, which indicates these are the strongest ghosts in the story and come up from the other side, so to say, or deeper consciousness of the experiencer, right? Or the first person, maybe you could say, right? And again, here we have sort of a allusion to diagonals and pyramids and, so on, right? A very strong diagonal light from lower left, top right, as opposed to the opposite diagonal of the prior lens flare. The prior lens flare, when this went like, yeah, well, in one diagonal. When we see this, we have this tilted mountainside, which is the other diagonal. If you combine these two pictures, which I've done down below, you get this sort of cross the diagonal pyramid shape, right? If you lay them on top of it, one follows the other, and if you lay them on top, it's more clear what is going on. This could be to point out an understanding that this first trip, the mountains are sloping this way, while the next trip, yeah, okay, this is also, yeah, it's another part. But let me take it from the beginning. A very strong diagonal line from opposed to the opposite diagonal line of the prior lens flare. This could be to point out an understanding that on this first trip, the mountains are sloping this way, while on the next trip, they're sloping the other way. To try to create a continuity error, right? But together, these angled mountainsides combined with the other diagonal of the lens flare create this cross pyramid apex view, right? Okay, but it's like, how do you create a flying across the landscape with a helicopter? How do you create a continuity error? Well, as smart as Kubrick is, when we see them go to the overlook, so supposedly, we instead of having it this way, the diagonal is going the other way, in order to say this cannot possibly be the same road, right? Or at least it's sort of uncannily strange. This shot chosen so the mountain peak ahead resembles the mountain on which the hotel is placed, and it also looks like a pyramid. It's a very strong reference to a pyramid as seen from the side, a subliminal connection to the subliminally overlaid pyramid before from the diagonal, right? There was this cross diagonal, and now you have a pyramid. So it's sort of, he's grooming the viewer, right? This is the first establishing shot of the hotel. And first of all, it's one big fucking pyramid, right? I mean, come on. I mean, it's not that difficult, right? The first establishing shot of the hotel shows a ski lift to the left. If you look closely, it's not very clear on my semi low res version of the movie, right? But I'd rather view this low res full frame than a 4K destroyed movie, right? Despite Ullman and Lehner claiming that they do not do skiing here because of the winter, it's actually a continuity error. Because of the winter snow and the closing of the hotel. So why is there a ski lift there alongside the hotel if there's no skiing? I mean, what the fuck, right? Okay, there are actually two yellow Beetle cars. Not the Beatles, but the car, right? In the parking area, which is maybe a symbol for split personality. The helicopter blades can be noticed in the shot, even in the 4K slim version, right? And this is another possible hint from Kubrick early on to look for clues. Another quite glaring error that a perfectionist like Kubrick never would allow unless he wanted to. Okay, so this is the chapter 0, right? The first chapter is when he enters the hotel, or just before. The next black screen with white text, and it says the interview, right? So that's what I call chapter 1. Okay, so let me have your comment. What do you think of this analysis so far? I think it's already pointing in a particular direction, right? Okay, thank you. Please share, like, and subscribe, as always, right? And please, if you know some people who might be interested in hearing about at least maybe a somewhat different angle to understanding The Shining that the usual suspects always come up with his, ghosts and the abusive Jack and so on, right? And I'm not necessarily saying that the person Jack appearing in the story is not based on some person in Wendy's past, but it's not the family going to the hotel kind of thing, right? It's a different story, underlying story that manifests as what you see on the screen. So please share, like, and subscribe. Give me a comment, what do you think? And also consider a Patreon or donation of some kind. And if you want more advanced kinds of donation, let me know. Right? I also take PayPal and so on, to encourage me to keep going with this long project here, right? So thank you for any support, links in the description and so on. And otherwise, have a nice day. See you in the next chapter.